everyday witches emerge from the shadows of secrecy. Broom closets are flinging open and witches are taking flight. Whether you are hiding in your cozy closet or flying with pride, stay for a spell as Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon and her guests share magical moments, stir the cauldron, and debunk misinformation and misconceptions about paganism, witches, and our wonderful world of magic.
Today I'm joined by my special guest, Rebecca Williamson. She is the owner of an event venue that's haunted, and I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit about the Cambre House and Farm. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks for having me. I'm Rebecca Williamson, and I am the owner of Cambre House and Farm. The Cambre House is a historic home that was built in 1867 by French Icarians Adolphe and Hortense Cambre. They came over from France to the United States in the Nauvoo area in 1850 and were part of the Icarian community. The Icarians were like a utopian society, basically the original hippie commune. They sold everything they owned and then lived in one-room apartment complexes where they ate together and worked together in the society. The Cambre family left and bought the property that I own today in 1860, and then worked on constructing the six-room home that stands there today. Everything in the home, for the most part today, is original to when they built it in 1867. So the Cambre family lived on the farm. It was a working apple orchard from the 1850s until around the 1940s. There were 4 generations of Cambres that lived in the home. And then my grandparents bought it in 1979. My grandparents loved history and antiques. And so buying the home was kind of like an extension of both of those loves. They bought the home not to live in, but to preserve the history of the home. My grandmother had come there as a young girl to pick apples, and she had some really fond memories of being out there. And when the home went up for auction, she took those memories and she said, "I want to buy it." And my grandfather said, "Well, I'm not really sure." And she dragged him out to the farm and he fell in love with it, and they bought it with the intention of preserving the history out there. It was exactly the way my grandmother had remembered it from when she was a little girl. And there just aren't many places you can say that about. And so she bought the home. They preserved the history. They went through the process to put it on the National Register of Historic Places. This was the first privately owned home in Hancock County that was put on the National Register of Historic Places. They just used it basically as a kind of like a second home. They lived 10 minutes away, so it wasn't like they were far away. But we did events out there. My grandparents always had craft shows out there every year. And then we had like a lot of family gatherings, and I had a few cousins that got married out there. And then after my grandparents passed away, I decided to buy the home to kind of keep their memory alive, to work on preserving the home as well. You know, they've spent so much time and so much effort preserving the home that I wanted to continue that. And so I bought the home in 2016 and then decided to open it up as a wedding venue in 2017 with the idea that if we've had a few weddings, then surely we can do a few more. And then, it became a wedding venue.
You mentioned Hancock County. Where is Hancock County?
We are west central Illinois. So I am right on the Mississippi River in the little bump out of Illinois that kind of looks like a nose. That's where I'm at.
This sounds like a lovely place, but I have a feeling that it's a little bit more spectacular than a place where people can celebrate a birthday and a wedding.
It's a gorgeous location with It's got the cute little 3-bedroom house, and it has really large lawns that surround the home. It's out in the middle of nowhere down some really long, curvy gravel roads. You really feel like you're there in the 1860s when you're out there. But it is also haunted. So I own a haunted wedding venue.
Haunted. What makes you think it's haunted?
Well, the experiences I've had out there. So my grandparents didn't really consider it to be haunted, but there were things that happened looking back on that I can definitely say were paranormal activity. We had problems with doors that opened and closed on their own. And my grandparents always just told us that was what happens in an older house. Doors open and close on their own, you know?
Oh, yeah. That happens in all houses, right?
It does.
Only if they're haunted.
Only if they're haunted. Yes, exactly. And so I didn't really think anything of it until I bought the house myself. And then I spent the night in there for the first time. It may seem kind of odd that I didn't really spend the night there before, but my grandparents didn't live very far away. And anytime it got dark, we always just said, oh, it's time to go home. And we left in the evenings, we always just went home. And I didn't really think that was odd until I was looking back on it later. Like, why did we never spend the night out there? I don't know.
What was that first night like?
That first night was interesting. It had a different feeling after dark. I had my daughter with me. She was 8 at the time, and she just did not want to sleep in this house at all. She was very, very upset that I was forcing her to sleep there. She didn't want to sleep in any bedroom. She flat out refused to sleep in a bedroom. And we ended up sleeping in the middle of the living room. That was the only room she said she would ever sleep in. To this day, that's the only room she prefers to sleep in, is the living room there. In the middle of the living room on a little twin size air mattress. And she's like glued to my side as I'm trying to sleep on this little air mattress. My sister had come with me on that night, and she slept upstairs in a bed, like a real person. She wasn't scared.
Real bed.
We have real beds. She had a puppy with her that night. And so the puppy was only a few weeks old and still had to go outside in the middle of the night. And so during the middle of the night, she came down the stairs, walked right by me to go out the front door to take the puppy outside. And I tried to keep my eyes closed because I didn't want to get the puppy excited. I didn't want to wake up my daughter. We're trying to keep the peace here so I can try to get some kind of sleep, even though it's not really great sleeping on this little dinky air mattress with a kid glued to me. And in the middle of the night, she came downstairs, walked right by me, and went outside 3 times. And so the next morning I told her, I said, I think your puppy did pretty good. You only went outside 3 times last night. And she said, no, we went outside twice. She did great last night. And I said, no, you went outside 3 times. I know I heard you. And she says, no, that was not me. And I argued with her even for a little while and finally came to the realization that I'd heard somebody that was not her come down the stairs and go outside once.
That's a little creepy.
It was a little creepy. And then it really got us to thinking back about the door situation that had gone on. When my grandparents had big events, the basement door would open so often that a lot of times they would have one of us grandkids stand by the door to make sure it stayed shut. They didn't want somebody to fall down the basement stairs accidentally, and that door opened so often that a lot of times they say, okay, make sure you stay by the door to keep it shut. And the attic door opened as well. That door actually is weighted to swing shut. So you push it open and it automatically will swing shut just because that's the way they built that door, to swing shut. But oftentimes we would go upstairs and that attic door would be standing open. And my grandmother always just said, oh, somebody must have opened that door. They blamed us grandkids a lot for opening that door. And then, too, if you tried to leave it open, then a lot of times you'd come upstairs and it'd be shut. And so we got to really thinking like, okay, maybe this is really more than an old house. Doors that are actually built to swing shut shouldn't open on their own. And I had a friend who was starting a paranormal team at that time. And I reached out to him and I said, I just bought this house. I think I might have activity out here. Would you like to come and investigate? And he said, of course, absolutely. And so he came out the next week and was super excited about investigating. And then that was the point where we knew we definitely had activity.
What evidence did you have?
There was a ton of evidence from that. An initial investigation was just incredible. Like I started by giving him like a tour of the home, like this is the living room, this is the dining room, that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm giving the tour and I'm freezing cold. I mean, just like shivering cold. I've got my winter coat on inside. I'm walking through the house and just totally shivering, thinking that the furnace is not working. And this was April. So April in Illinois can be kind of chilly. It was about 40, 43 degrees outside. And drizzly, a rainy day. Those spring days can get really like just chill, have a chill to them. So I'm shivering inside this house thinking the furnace is dead. And I finished the tour and, I'm shivering and I'm like, I'm so worried about this furnace. And so he pulls out a digital thermometer to check the temperature of the house so we can verify if my furnace is dead or not. And the temperature of the furnace was set at 60 degrees. And he checked the air with the digital thermometer and it was registering at 58. So the furnace was working. That was the good thing, but I have my winter coat on and I'm shivering inside the house. So then the question is, why am I so cold? And so they took the digital thermometer and were checking around me. And from about my waist down, directly behind me, the temperature was registering 20 degrees on the digital thermometer. And it was dipping into the teens.
And you were the only one who was cold.
I was the only one who was cold. It was a solid cold spot that was about the size of a child standing behind me. And we were able to follow and register that cold spot with a digital thermometer for about an hour and a half. It was absolutely crazy. And then too, we got a lot of responses with the different paranormal equipment. He got a lot of answers with the spirit box and just lots of knocks and noises. Cambre is really well known for its knocks and noises.
Can you tell us what the spirit box is?
The spirit box is a piece of paranormal equipment. It scrolls through radio stations very fast, so it sounds very staticky. And then occasionally you'll hear little bits and noises and words, and sometimes they'll come out of that. And the idea is that spirits can manipulate the sound and the energy of that spirit box to make words and sentences. Yeah, we were getting very intelligent responses that actually sounded like words and sentences. And we were able to confirm through the investigation that we were dealing with a spirit in home. I have actually very well documented history of the location from the work that my grandparents did to put it on the National Register of Historic Places. And because it was only owned by one family, I have the complete genealogy of the Cambre family who lived in the home. And one of their daughters passed away at the age of 9, and her name is Eglantine. And we were able to confirm through investigation that Eglantine is the spirit that is most active in the home.
So she lives with you.
She does. She does.
Have you gotten used to her being there?
Yes. I've gotten very used to the spirits at Cambre. Eglantine is the most vocal and the most active, and she's very playful. She likes noises and music, and a lot of times we'll be like downstairs, hear noise upstairs, and go to investigate upstairs to see what happened. And then there'll be another noise downstairs, like she's playing a game of hide and seek with us.
Have you been able to identify any of the other ghosts in your home?
Yes. The other one that's probably more well known is Fritz. So Adolf and Hortense built the home, and then their children were Fritz and Anita and Eglantine. They had 10 altogether, but those are the three we'll cover today. Fritz and Anita took over running the farm after their parents passed away. Fritz and Anita never were married or had children of their own, but they lived basically their whole lives on the farm. The upstairs bedroom that my daughter refuses to sleep in is Fritz's bedroom. We have letters from the family that confirm that that is his room. There's just kind of a feeling when you're up there in that room of a watchfulness. A lot of people feel just like uncomfortable in that room. And if I have people spending the night, generally that is the room that is never slept in. It's Fritz's room. And we found that Fritz is responsible for a lot of the door activity. My front door locks people out on a regular basis, or conversely, that opens for people when they need to come in. My mother and Fritz don't get along very well. My mother is alive, but she comes in and she rearranges furniture and just kind of is like a bull in a china shop hopeful type person where she, doesn't like the curtains, so she'll take them down and replace them type of thing. And Fritz really does not like this at all. And so when I first bought the home, I made sure she had a key because she was helping me out, but her key wouldn't unlock the door. And we tried different keys. Her key never unlocks the door. I've switched out the lock because I thought it was an issue with the lock, and my mom's key still doesn't work.
He just doesn't like her.
It does not like her. And one of the days that we really clued into the fact that Fritz just does not have a fondness for my mother was she was over there cleaning the kitchen. And this particular day, I believe was the day she decided she didn't like my throw pillows. She didn't think they matched the couch very well. And so she threw them away.
Oh, that's nice.
It's my mom, you just kind of got to roll with it. She is helpful. She does, like I said, she was there cleaning the kitchen. So I'm not arguing a whole lot, but Fritz is, because when she went to take the trash bag out to her car, the front door shut and locked behind her, and she was then locked out of the house.
And that doesn't happen to anybody else.
Just my mother. Just my mother. Occasionally I'll have like somebody who comes and tries to unlock the door and the door won't work for them. This happened several times. It just kind of depends on the person and why they're there. The furnace guy comes early. I had a furnace guy who showed up 30 minutes before he told me he was going to be there. And when I got there at the time he said he was coming, he had finished. I had pulled up to the house as he's walking out the front door, and he says, "Yeah, the door is unlocked. I got it all done." And I'm like, I know the door was locked. I locked it myself like an hour before. So, I mean, it had been locked, but like I said, the furnace guy shows up to work on the furnace and the door is unlocked. And here, he goes in and he takes care of it. My mother shows up to rearrange furniture, and she can't get in. And a lot of that is Fritz. He's very watchful over the property.
The Cambre House and Farm, is it one dwelling, the home that you live in, or are there several dwellings where people can stay in other homes, or is everybody staying in your home?
I don't live there. I do not live at the farm.
Oh, you don't live there? Okay.
No, I do not. No.
Okay, so this is mainly for guests.
Yes. It's a 3-bedroom home that I rent out as a wedding venue. So I have cats and dogs and kids, and I can't. You can't have a family in a little tiny 3-bedroom house that you're renting out as a business. That's just not going to work for anyone.
I was imagining it to be this enormous home with lots of rooms.
No, it's a very small house. For the time period, it's actually pretty good size, but today's standards, it's a small 3-bedroom house. It's a large piece of property, so there's 30 acres out there, and I do have a couple other smaller cabins on the same piece of property. Those I rent out as Airbnbs. I live in Nauvoo itself, so I'm about 10 minutes away.
Have your guests reported back to you any paranormal activities?
Yes. Guests will often report footsteps. That's one of the most common things, is that they will hear footsteps walking around I had a group that was out there camping, and one of their members had a CPAP, and they slept inside so they could use the machine. And I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're pretty loud. And he heard footsteps through the night that he could hear over the CPAP machine. And that person didn't even know it was haunted. The camping group didn't really want to worry their camping people about the house being haunted, so they didn't even tell them. And the next morning, the guy wakes up and he went out to say, he's like, that house is haunted, right? So
nobody's forewarned that it's haunted. They just find out after they stay there.
I have been forewarning people. It kind of depends on the group and why they're out there. Some people are a little more upfront with it, and I've gotten so I am a little more upfront with it as well. One of my friends gave me a sign that says, "Welcome to my haunted farmhouse," and I have that sitting on the shelf in the kitchen, and it's there. I kind of have leaned into it more as the years have gone on because it's just a big part of the farm and Cambre and what the farm is.
But as a child, you were not aware that it was haunted.
That was not something that we ever really talked about. 80s, 90s, it wasn't as popular to have a haunted house or a house that is haunted. And looking back, like I said, there was definitely stuff that was going on, but my grandparents always chalked it up to being an old house. It's possible that we played with ghosts when we were kids. I'm not sure. It always seemed like when we were out there playing, there was always another kid out there to play with. And looking back on it, were they actually kids? Were they ghosts? I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, who's that kid? Where'd that kid come from?
I don't know. There were always kids out there to play with. And, to be fair, my grandparents did have people that came with them a lot. When we were out there, we were usually working on a project, and, aunts and uncles and cousins were out there, but there was also, just kids out there to play with. And my sister especially really thinks that she probably played with eglantine as a child.
So you're thinking that maybe one or some of these children were ghosts?
Looking back, it's possible. I'll never know for sure because, my grandmother's passed away now, and, who remembers for sure who was there one time 30, 40 years ago, So I'll never know that for sure, but it's very possible.
Is she your maternal grandmother or paternal grandmother?
The grandmother who owned the farm before me was my maternal grandmother.
Have you asked your mother if she had any experiences?
I've asked her. She does remember the door stuff. Like I said, that's something that coming back to it as an adult, especially with the paranormal investigator side of the brain, using it to try and debunk that, that activity that we experience so often, like those doors, I cannot do anything to make them open. Like if it was a cross draft situation, I should be able to recreate that. Or, if it's a floor vibration thing, I should be able to recreate that. And we have done everything possible, and I cannot make that door open. And yet it will still open on its own to this day. Like I said, that's one that we have never been able to find a logical reason as to why those doors open, but everyone in my family remembers those doors opening.
Is anyone in your family afraid of the ghosts in the home?
At this point, no. When I first started doing this, they were a little surprised. But the more we've done it, I've hosted paranormal investigations at the farm, and several of my family members have come out there and participated in that. And now they're more comfortable with it. It's just Cambre and the way it is.
But you don't advertise it as a haunted venue.
I do actually. I advertise it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to say maybe you might get more business.
Yes.
Or the right business.
Yeah, it's available to rent for paranormal investigators. I changed up my advertising about 5 years ago, and now all my stuff says a haunted wedding venue. It is what it is. When I first started doing like the paranormal investigating and letting teams come in and investigate the home, I had a lot of people tell me that, you know, if I told people my wedding venue was haunted, that brides would be too scared to rent it, and it was probably a good idea to not tell people it was haunted. But the longer I've done it, the more I realize that people enjoy the story of it. And most of my brides who have come out and gotten married at the farm have been there for ghost tours, and they come out for a ghost tour and they see how beautiful the location is and they love it, and then they get married out there. So not every bride is into the paranormal, but a lot of them are.
Advertising as a haunted venue, you're going to attract the people who really want that experience.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And now I do like about half of them are weddings, and then about half of them are paranormal teams looking for ghosts.
Have you ever been on a television show, a paranormal television show?
I've been on some of the YouTube shows. I haven't really been on a big one. I haven't been on a big one yet, but I have been on a couple YouTube shows. If you search Cambre on YouTube, you'll find a few investigations from different teams that have been there. I was on a PBS series about Illinois history. And so I was able to tell the history of the location and stuff on that. And that show is really good. And you'll find that if you Google. But yeah, I haven't been on one of the big shows yet.
Oh, one day you will be.
One day, maybe one day.
Before purchasing this home and before your grandmother had purchased the home, did you believe in ghosts?
I've always loved ghost stories. When I was in grade school, I checked out every book in my school library on ghosts and read all about hauntings. And I've always loved a good ghost story. And this is kind of like, you know, being able to embrace ghost stories and find my own ghost stories. And I really enjoy the paranormal stuff. It's fun.
I've always enjoyed ghost stories as a kid and as an adult, and I have stayed in haunted places. And then I was disappointed when I didn't see the ghost or hear the ghost. Like, wait a minute, that's no fair. There's supposed to be a ghost here.
Yeah, I know. And I can't guarantee that you're going to have an experience at the farm. I never guarantee that. But we do have public ghost tours, and I do kind of like a little 2-hour tour where we tell you the history of the location. And then I have a paranormal team that comes and brings their equipment. And a lot of times people will have experiences during the ghost tour where, you know, the equipment will go off and, you know, we get all excited. And sometimes it's not something that we can explain, and sometimes we can explain it. It just kind of depends on what happens and the type of activity, but we do have fun doing it regardless.
Do you believe that the ghosts in that home were all the residents who have lived there?
For the most part, yes. We've had occasional contact with other spirits. So my grandparents will occasionally pop in, which is very exciting to be able to kind of ask them questions, and they've responded that they're very happy with what I'm doing out there. And so it's really affirming to me to get that confirmation that they're happy with what I'm doing out there at the farm. And there's a theory that when you do paranormal investigating in a location, that then it becomes a beacon to spirits looking to make contact. And so we have had occasional wandering spirits, as they might be called. Some people on ghost tours have had experiences where relatives have connected with them and stuff like that. Like I said, I can't guarantee any activity, and I won't guarantee that you will have an experience like that. But it has happened occasionally.
Is there anything else you would like to tell us about your experiences and the history of Cambre House?
I always like to tell my son's ghost stories because my son has the best ghost stories from Cambre. After he graduated high school, he decided he was going to move to the farm to help me take care of it. I think he just really kind of wanted some freedom and, hey, mom owns this extra house. And so he moved out to the farm and was living there for about 9 months, almost a full year, but not quite, before he decided that he needed a real job. But his ghost stories are the best. The time he spent out there, he had some really incredible things happen. One of my favorites, it was snowing. And this was like one of the very first true snowfalls of the year. And the snow was coming down with some really thick, fat flakes. And I messaged him and I said, I need some pictures of the house in the snow. Can you go outside and take some pictures of the house for me? And it was kind of right about dusk. So it was going to be like the perfect time for the snowy picture, of sunset and big fat flakes. And so he says, okay. And he goes outside, he takes his picture, and then he goes to get something out of his car. He gets it out of his car. He turns around to come back to the house, and there is a person standing at the corner of the house. They look at each other, and then the person ducks around the corner of the house and runs. My son thinks it's a trespasser, and he's wanting them to leave, but he also needs to make sure that they've left. So he goes inside to get a flashlight, and thinking that he's just going to be able to follow the footprints in the snow and make sure that this person is left. So he comes back out with the flashlight. He goes to the corner of the house where the person was standing to find the footsteps, and there are no footsteps there.
I knew you were going to say that.
An entire fresh layer of snow with no footprints in it at all.
Oh, I bet that was really exciting for him.
He was pretty startled. He was very startled because when he saw that person, he was like maybe 100 feet away. I mean, he was close enough where he could really see. He really thought it was a flesh embodied real person standing there. And he was very startled. He called me and he kind of did the whole mom. I got to the point where I could tell something had happened every time he called because he did this mom. But he said, yeah, this is why I don't like to go outside after dark.
So most of these occurrences are at night, in the evening and at night.
Not all of them. A lot of them, yes. But we've had footsteps. We've had footsteps and stuff during the day as well. I was getting ready for a craft show one day and standing in the kitchen watching people pull in the yard and start to unload their things. And I'm standing there and I hear footsteps walking above my head. And I know there was no one upstairs. I was the only one in the house.
Well, you're no longer bothered by them. They're just part of the house.
It's just part of the house. I like to think it's the Cambre family enjoying the house being used. I think they like having the weddings and events out there. It feels like they enjoy it to me, having their home being a happy home again. The Cambres were a happy family. It was a happy home when they lived there. And I think they just chose not to leave.
Well, maybe one day you'll choose not to leave.
Maybe.
Is there anything else you would like to tell the listeners before we sign off?
No, that's basically it. You can always find me on cambrehouse.com is my website. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Cambre House, Cambre period house. At this point, if you type Cambre into a search engine, I should come up.
And you should come up on the YouTube channels that featured your Cambre House and Farm.
Yes.
I'll put all those links in the episode notes as well.
Oh, that'd be great.
Thank you, Rebecca, for sharing your story.
Thanks for having me on. I always enjoy telling a good ghost story.
Thank you for joining us for Witchcasting with Theodora Pendragon. Have a burning question or have a topic you'd love Theodora and her guests to discuss on the show? Contact her through Instagram at Theodora Pendragon. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And help us spread the word by leaving us a rating and review and sharing it with your friends. See you next time, and may your magic always shine.